Welcome back, everybody, to Ravenstar's Witching Hour. I am your host, Solaris Blue Ribbon. My incredible guest tonight is Russ Tanner. And Russ, I want to thank you so much for joining us once again. It's always a pleasure to have you on board with us.
It's an honor.
You have so much wonderful information and so important for everybody to be listening to. And I was going to ask you, I've noticed a huge shift, not only with the dumbing down of people, but also more violence. And so far as just a lot of anger, a lot of rage, a lot of polarization. And some of that could be political and a lot of other things. But it seems to me like it's behavior modification. And I think we've touched a little bit on how geoengineering can affect that psychologically or a person.
Oh, profoundly. And this is one thing where I'm very grateful. I mean, something good, when something bad happens in your life, I like something good to come out of it. And the good that came out of being very mercury poisoned for me is I did a lot of research on mercury, and it helped shape my worldview. Because now that I know that mercury is one of the weapons of the elite who are forming the New World Order, I know that poisoning the public is going to have a profound effect on people's behavior, because mercury is the fear drug. And it's not just mercury. I know there's other things as well, and the EMF contributes to it, all of the radiation that you're exposed to. This all works together to open your cell wall porosity, to allow toxins into your cells. But the one thing that I know a lot about and have studied a lot is mercury. And I know that in my own case, the depression that I felt, panic attacks, and this is not just me, this is the many people that I've spoken to over the years, but panic attacks, OCD, anything that comes from fear, even jealousy. I've seen mercury break up relationships as one person gets suspicious, one person gets angry. It makes them more explosive, more tempers are worse. Mercury profoundly affects a person's personality. And this is where, for those who haven't learned this yet, Mad as a Hatter, the Alice in Wonderland cliche about the hatter who actually made hats. And when you cure the felt or the material that's used in hat making, you use mercury vapor. And so the Mad Hatter became mad because of mercury.
Well, I didn't know that.
No,
wow.
Really? Okay, yeah.
I didn't. That's very interesting. Yeah.
That's why the mercury makes people mad, and mad in the really means in the Old English crazy. It makes you a crazy person, and that means you're hyper. Your mind is spinning. Songs loop in your head. You can't get to sleep because your mind is so active, because it lowers GABA. That's the part of the scientific reason, but there's other reasons. It has profound effect on your hormones, and so it just makes you fearful, and all of the emotions and all of the destructiveness, including anger, outbursts of anger, or violent behavior, blood sugar issues that also cause, as a secondary cause of modified behavior. Mercury has a profound effect on all of these. Even OCD, you need to control everything. Everything needs to be in order. But it all comes from fear, from having a fear of being out of control. So you have to exert that control. Some people exude that with anger. Some people do that with organization. Other people try to control in other ways. So Mercury is a profound effect on that. People are going mad today. Slowly we're affected to one degree to another. Yeah, you see it happen.
Yeah, I see a slow poison of humanity. There's no doubt about it. And however it's poisoning them, whether it's the mercury or directed energy weapons, I know I've had my experience with different types of technologies, and I can tell you it's a real poison and toxin if you don't know how to transmute it. And that's the thing, it's hard to transmute some of these transmissions and frequencies, or even some of the technology and even the chemicals they're using against us. And I was going to ask you a little bit about fracking, because they're really trying to frack here where I live. I absolutely hate fracking, and I don't know what your stance is on that, but it seems to me like that's very, very toxic on so many different levels. Once again, something else to mix into the potion, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, one of the most precious things on Earth is water. We need it for life. And when you inject the nasty poisonous chemicals into the water system, into the underground water supply, or let the runoff, all the things that happen from fracking, it just injects poison into the environment. And the thing that is just mind-boggling, it's not really mind-boggling if you understand the mindset of the people doing it, but it's mind-boggling that the public is allowing it, is that we have the technology to be way beyond this. We don't need to be doing this. We don't need to be destroying the world to get the energy that we need. We have the technology here. So fracking, it's another way to try to justify destroying the earth and saying, oh, we're trying to help you because we're going to derive energy from the earth. So it's just like, it doesn't make sense when you see the big picture.
No, it's like a non-qualified doctor trying to do surgery. It reminds me of, remember Star Trek, where I always reference this, but when McCoy comes back and he sees the primordial way they're working their surgery, and he's like, God, don't do that.
I love that. They're arguing in the elevator.
Yeah, it's just like, but that's the whole thing. You see things from such a high perspective, and it's not like we're daydreaming. And you're right, we do have the technology to change the world overnight. We have all these black science departments that could easily release this information and technology, yet they still want to keep it this way. It's very sad to see that this has happened, and even more sad to watch mankind allow it. That's why I applaud you for the work you do, and the people that are out there also. All of us are out, we're trying to do the best we can to bring enlightenment to what's going on here, but nonetheless, it has to change, and it starts with a voice and education, and then, of course, then it filters through, and we can try to get it, somebody's attention in D.C. I've certainly tried. So I don't know if you've had any luck with anybody over there in D.C. or Congress.
I think we're getting there. I mean, I think some real breakthroughs in autism, and this is a great example, happened when some of the members of Congress and a few senators had autistic children, and that's when they became impassioned. Really, the overriding principle to getting government's attention here, I think, is that government serves those whom they fear. If they fear the global elite, they will serve the global elite. But when the people rise up together and they begin holding government accountable for their crimes and for their corruption, they will fear the people. And when they fear the people, they will serve the people. They serve those whom they fear. So there must be accountability. And in my view, you can't have justice without accountability. You can't have righteousness without justice. You've got to and this is the public's job. This is every one of our job. And if somebody makes an excuse, because I hear all the excuses all the time, you hear, well, you can't really know what's going on. You can't really do anything about it. Well, I remind people and say, everything that ever happened good in the history of mankind was done because people knew about something and then they did something about it. So to say that suddenly we can't do something about it, I know in the herb industry, we have more herb freedom in the United States than practically anywhere. In the EU, a few years ago, they lost 80% of their rights to even buy many, many herbs. But the United States, thankfully, we have a huge network of herbalists who, any time one of those senators introduces a bill, we flood the White House, we flood those offices with phone calls and say, oh, no, you don't. It's not going to happen. And they back down. And thankfully, we still have those rights. And so people must rise up, but nobody's going to do this for you. Nobody's going to do this for you. Everybody's got to get up, educate themselves, and start allocating a little piece of their day to restoring and fixing the problems. But it begins with educating yourself, I believe. Educate yourself first, because that's the other thing I hear is, well, I don't know what to do. Well, once you educate yourself and then you realize what's been done to you, what you need to do will become self-evident. So do steps 1 and 2, and number 3 will come naturally.
Absolutely, yeah. And war crimes come to mind. I mean, insofar as what's going on here and how the whole world has been weaponized and everything has been just one big concoction of toxicity. Seems to me like these people should be held accountable, and I'd like to see that happen on so many different levels. The negligence alone, and also the premeditated, side to it, where they really have an agenda behind it without any paranoia. We understand very clearly that this is not in the highest good for anybody here on this world. So once again, it's taking action and trying to change things. What's interesting also, I'm sure you probably read all the articles over the years with all these holistic healers that have been dying or murdered. Have you been keeping track of that at all?
I have, yeah. I have.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that, that should be a wake-up call for us. When people start encroaching upon the profits of the pharmaceutical industry, or they start encroaching upon the depopulation that I wholeheartedly know is taking place right now, and they start finding ways around these things, then the powers that be will just remove them. And this is one thing, is that, you watch movies, and I want to just help people to see this, is that, you can watch movies and you always have these dopey evil characters. They're kind of clumsy, or they're funny, or if you watch Batman, they all have these very eccentric characteristics or whatever, but they don't really show you what the people we're dealing with are really like. They really kind of marginalize and minimalize what we're really dealing with. We're dealing with somebody who would prefer that you are dead. and they would prefer to profit while you suffer before you die. And they would prefer that your family dies, and they want you to have a nice short lifespan, and they want to make sure that they profit. And when you retire, they want to make sure that you die as soon as you retire, if possible, because then you're a burden to their money-making system. And I mean, all the statements I just made are things that have either come from whistleblowers or their own literature. I'm not making this up, not out of my mouth. We're not dealing with characters who are goofy because they had a bad parenthood. We're dealing with a system of people who have become part of a system and an ideology that says right makes might makes right. I can do whatever I want as long as I can get away with it, and that's what is happening. And it's up to every person to do something about it. All of us.
That's well said. And that is it. And they will never stop until somebody stops them, because as long as they can get away with it, they're going to continue on and on and on. And that's really unfortunate, but it is going on.
Yeah, exactly. That's the mentality. I mean, might makes right. They are as long as they get away with it, that's exactly it. They're going to keep getting away with it. And there's no one who's going to do this work for us. It's our responsibility to stop this from happening.
Mm-hmm. Right. Do you see a positive outcome at all? I mean, what's your take on it, intuitively speaking?
Well, I kind of see us. I think honestly that we're in a lot of trouble because people are waking up too slowly and they're being too resistive to doing what they need to do. And I'm not trying to be pessimistic, but if I'm going to be truly honest in my answer, which of course I have to be, then I think we're going to go through, times are going to get much worse before they get better. Mm-hmm. We have literature that talks about the planned world wars, and there's going to be 3 world wars, and it's going to be Russia and China against the United States. That's the next world war. That's, Albert Pike actually wrote a letter about that and described some of the details of that. And when you reverse engineers, put the pieces together, it all makes sense. So we've got dark days ahead, sadly, because people are waking up too slowly, or if they do wake up, they're too slow to start taking action. I'm very sad to say, and I think in the end, on our current trajectory, unless people change their trajectory and are willing to wake up quicker, we're going to end up relying on divine intervention. I think is going to be our only. There's going to have to be some big event that's going to turn this around on our current path. So I do encourage people, please wake up. It doesn't have to be this bad. This is my mantra. It doesn't have to be this way. A penny of prevention, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. That's so true, because the little bit of suffering that you'll go through spending 10 minutes a day, 5 days a week doing something for your country, and then going to a meeting and watching a video a couple times a month and educating yourself and empowering yourself with that education and talking to other people is going to be a lot better than World War III and the apocalypse. That just put them on the scales. Which one would you prefer? If you knew you could stop World War III, if you knew you could postpone it for 20 or 50 or 100 years, would you do it? How hard would you be willing to work if you knew how bad conditions will be? So, there's a carrot and there's a stick here. There's a lot of good to be gained and there's a lot to look forward to. But if we fail to do our job, we have dark days ahead. So please, everyone, do your job.
I totally see that. That's well said. You're very inspiring on a lot of different levels, and I see it too. I'm a very optimistic being. I used to be super optimistic all the time, and I realized over the years, especially after where I've been with interfacing with artificial intelligence, I've been kind of cynical. I really have, and I've tried to put the truth out as best I can. But I agree with you. I think people need to really snap out of it and just get more grounded, but yet stay on the higher level of spirituality and consciousness, so they're able to understand what we're dealing with here. And it is very insidious, and that's very concerning. And when you mentioned China and Russia against the U.S., I thought it was actually China against the U.S. with Russia. No?
Yeah. Okay,
yes, that's so Russia would be our ally in that, right? Or maybe I just didn't.
Well, I don't think so. I think in my understanding of it, it is China and Russia will be against the U.S. Okay, all right. Yeah, when you listen to some of the people who've decoded some of this, I mean, you've got people like William Cooper and Eustace Mullins who did some great work exposing what these people said. America, there's a plan to. It's called America's Appointment with Destiny is one of the titles that have been given to some of these radio programs from years ago that actually exposed what the elite's plan was for the country. And the thing that makes it so shocking is that if you listen to that, it's exactly what's going on today. I mean, all the way down to the planned shootings. You know, we have all of these shootings that are suddenly happening now. And we knew back in the 90s when I was working with a political party with amazing people. I mean, this is where I cut my teeth and started learning the way the world really works and had my eye-opening shock, you know, when I was working with these people who already knew all this stuff, you know, I learned from them that that America was, if these people have their way, these people who are running the show, running the countries, if they have their way, they have a destiny for America, which is really dark because they're moving the power. That's part of the free trade, was to move industry over the other countries and then destroy the United States. And we knew the people in the group that I worked in, all because I cared about people and I cared about our country and I wanted to do something good. I learned out of that passion, and I'm very grateful for this, I learned that the last thing that was going to happen before a foreign invasion, this is what these people who worked on the inside, these are people who worked with presidents, these are people who I had the privilege of actually having conversations with and talking with while I was working with this group, is they said the last thing that will happen before a physical invasion of the United States is disarming the public. So when you see them coming after the guns, then it's here. And so, and they said the way that they're going to disarm the public is they're going to have public shootings and they're going to say we have to take the guns away from the public. Well, isn't it interesting that all of a sudden in the last few years we're having all these public shootings, and when you analyze these public shootings, they have a whole lot of really suspicious attributes that don't look like they're a natural sequence of events, but they have some elements of orchestration to them.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Excuse me. They're false flags for sure. A lot of damage control, a lot of things going on behind the scenes that are very criminal, if you ask me. And I think you're right. I think Trump did kind of slow that down when he entered into office, in my opinion. I think had we had, excuse me, another president, a different president, we might not have the opportunities to slow things down the way we've been able to. Yeah.
No, I think you're right. I think that this has given us a little buffer. This is the calm before the storm. So right. I hope that people will get up and make sure the storm doesn't hit anytime soon. You know, we have that power. I truly believe we have that power. We have the ability to do that, but we have to work together to do that. So yeah, I agree with you. I do agree with you.
Yeah. Another thing is the artificial intelligence, the whole concept of using artificial intelligence to control everything and to delegate everybody to a machine world, which I think is part of that transhumanism agenda as well. So that's another aspect that I'm looking at as well, as everything is automated. Excuse me, like in China, everything is pattern recognition, facial recognition, to a point where people really don't have any privacy whatsoever. And even here, we're getting invaded more and more with surveilling and drones and a lot of other things. So I think it can go bad very quickly if we don't pay attention and monitor these things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the reason for the monitoring is so that those in power never lose power. They're trying to, and this is what I believe, the whole Patriot Act, the whole reason for public surveillance is to keep an uprising from happening. They call this they called, some people have heard of the velvet glove on the iron fist, the concept of making government look beneficent while at the same time really behind it there's an iron fist. That's kind of the loose, broad interpretation of that. And if you've ever heard that, you might know some of the deeper implications of that. But the bottom line is the surveillance, the taking away your public. It's done in the guise of safety. We're trying to protect the public. We're trying to do it for your own good, and it's exactly the opposite. And it's ironic when you look at so many things. You look at certain things we're taught in public education, like their kids are looking up and being taught these are contrails. It's like, well, that's not education. That's propagandization. That's lying to them, because if those children believe those are harmless water vapor trails, they will not do anything to oppose them. So it's actually tremendous amount of harm that is being done to them. So very true. Yeah, it's up to the public. I mean, we have to get involved and realize these things are happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I do feel sorry for the kids these days. I wouldn't want to go to school on this timeline. I'll tell you what, poor things,
Yes.
There's an awful lot of weird going on, a lot of distortion, and I feel very sorry for them. It's interesting, also the data mining comes to mind with surveilling and, of course, compiling personal information from a person of interest. So that this is another thing they do. Their paranoia is about stealing people's personal information, private information, and utilizing it with their own intelligence communities to weaponize for whatever reason, or maybe even have or create and compile lists. And once again, you're dealing with a way to stop people from actually getting together or waking up and changing things for the better. It's very interesting.
Yeah, actually, another mechanism of control is right along those lines, where actually Aaron Russo, who was a producer of Trading Places with Eddie Murphy, also was the manager for Bette Midler and produced The Rose. He actually ran for governor of Chicago and almost won. And because of his political success, he was actually approached by Nick Rockefeller. Remember, big brother of the Rockefeller family, right? Mm-hmm. And Aaron Russo gave an interview. Aaron Russo was a great guy, I think. He was very brave. He stood up for the people. He is no longer with us. But he actually said this. He said Nick Rockefeller told him many things, but among them was this, is that we're going to chip everybody. What we're going to do, the whole reason for the legislation that was passed in the Patriot Act, part of the reason, besides surveilling people, was that we're going to eventually lead to chipping everybody. And Aaron Russo said, why? Why would you do that? Why would you do that to people? Because if they become a dissident or they oppose government, then we turn their chip off and they can't buy or sell anything. And so that essentially neutralizes them. So when you turn physical money into something electronic that you can empty and fill bank accounts by flipping switches and typing on a keyboard, it puts so much money into a concentrated spot where you can have just a tiny group of people who are controlling your bank accounts and have the power to do this, that if you're a dissident, you end up with no more bank accounts. And it's like The Running Man. There was a movie back 20 years.
I remember that. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. Schwarzenegger, yeah, I mean, and they did that to him, and it was just amazing. In fact, they even used the new facial tech. There's facial technology where you can take a YouTube video, take someone in the YouTube video, and you can talk while a camera looks at you, and you can make the person in the video move to your facial movements, so it looks like they're talking, but it's really you moving your face and talking. And that also is technology from The Running Man as well. Mm-hmm. So it's all about control. This whole thing about Nick Rockefeller talked about chipping everybody so that you can't buy or sell anything. You can't participate in the economy unless your chip is working. And if you're a dissident and you oppose government, we turn your chip off. That's what he said.
It's interesting. The chip to me is the credit card.
I think we're right about there. Mm-hmm. We're on the brink of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Because we have signals, where I've been, I think you pretty much know kind of where my background was, but I was inducted into a covert program where they interfaced me with technology. So I didn't need a chip. It was a signal interface, and they called it re-education. Okay, when I was being interfaced with synthetic telepathy, and of course I had to testify in the courts in 2006 with this. It was terrible. But that's the technology that they're running with now with artificial intelligence, and I'm very familiar with. But that technology has been weaponized to a point where it's used for more brainwashing, entrainment programming. And what they told me what point blank was it was for re-education. And apparently, from what I understand, Cheney was using it with prisons and insofar as trying to re-educate inmates. So they're using it for influence, basically. But to me, when you say chipping too, there's the signals. It can get so ugly so quick with all this technology. And once again, if you stand up and you stand out against whatever they want to create as an agenda, and they'll decide to, okay, well, we're going to go ahead and have a visa court, and we're going to come after you and interface you with the technology to change your ideas to accommodate our reality is pretty much what they're trying to do. So I can see it going bad. I can profile it too and see it very, very bad. So, and that's one of the things I've been on the front lines against is the misuse of those technologies that are mind control oriented or influencing or harming the brain and violating your sacred temple within.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and they want to control every aspect of your life. I mean, it's not enough to take your body. It's not enough to destroy your spirit and your will. They want to take your soul too. I mean, they just want to control. Really they want to control every aspect of your life down to the finest grain, and they don't want. That's the iron fist. They don't want any room for anyone to ever rise up and overtake their power. They're securing their power right now, and that's the mode that we're in right now. They're making their move now. We talked about this in the 90s, saying one day they're going to make their move, and the people, there's only a few people I know who really understand the depths of this, and we all look at each other and say, they're making their move. This is happening right now.
Yeah, it's very, very, I'm not afraid of it. I'll tell you what, it's just kind of disconcerting, I guess I never saw this coming. I mean, you always want to see things, on a better horizon, but it's interesting how this is creeping up and it's manifesting. And I think it's because people have awakened too. A lot of people like us, I mean, we're very awake and enlightened, and we have a lot of information. And I think that was a threat. There's no doubt. And the interface has brought that, excuse me, the internet has brought that closer to everybody because it's the window to the world, but we can also get very intimate with people's information. And to me, I think that when they're data mining with these companies and these organizations like CIA or whatever, then they're probably getting more and more nervous about how much knowledge we really do have opposed to their mind control and the overlay that they use.
Right, yeah, it's a big. Brzezinski actually made a statement in a speech years ago. People might realize where he made some statement to the effect that they regret creating or giving the internet to the public. There was some kind of, you know what I mean? There was some regret that we gave, and this is the thing that amazed me is when I was younger, I would see that people got all their information from the nightly news. And I started questioning as a child. I'd see everybody sitting around watching the nightly news. That's what people did in our time. They sat around the TV and watched the nightly news before or after dinner, right? Kind of a little, And I would ask myself, how do we really know that's true? Because how would we find out if it wasn't? Because, and everybody's like, well, there's 3 different networks, so of course. But I'm like, well, they're all saying exactly the same thing. Isn't that kind of weird? This started way back. I started questioning these things. And now that I understand the structure, and you've got, 5 corporations controlling, 95 at least, if not 98% of all media. And, of course, when you control the power structure of a corporation, you can have just a handful of people control tens of thousands of people and the whole policy of that whole organization. So it's a tremendous amount of power. So now with the Internet, the reason that I was so quick to get my amalgam fillings taken out of my mouth is because I was able to go on the internet, and same thing with the person who told me about amalgam fillings. They went on the internet, I went on the internet, and I found stories from other people who had all these symptoms. I'm like, oh my gosh, those are my symptoms too. And that was the catalyst, because I was able to communicate with another person that across the world that I never would have been able to have contact with. And if all I had was nightly news, I would never have had that affirmation and had that enough impetus, because I might have doubted because of all the propaganda. Oh, they're safe, because that's what nightly news always told us. So putting people in touch. I always said that. So when you bring people together, good things happen. But you've got to keep it going.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons I got into the radio, is because I wanted the truth out there. And I realized that, if you want something done, you have to do it yourself most of the time. And what has been a blessing is the truth media, because not the alternative media, but the truth media, because we are out here putting information out that's solid. And it's like a little ripple effect, because it does affect other people. They start brainstorming and they start understanding the information. And I think that's incredible. About when I first started testifying against, the type of technology I was interfaced with, nobody knew what I was talking about. And now everybody knows it. So it's fantastic that has happened on this timeline, that we're actually able to share that information and hopefully benefit people down the road. So, and like I said, Russ, I applaud you for what you're doing. I know that you've been working so hard putting this information out there with the chemtrails and the geoengineering, and it's most appreciated. It really is. That's why I like to have you consistently on my show to remind everybody what's going on.
Thank you so much. People have no idea. There's a lot of, you have all kinds of different people that you deal with from day after day. We have 180,000 people in our Facebook group for chemical aerosols. It's called Chemtrails Global Skywatch. And you have all kinds of people. There are people usually there's a small percentage of people that are actively involved. There's a lot of people watching. There's your critics, there's your trolls, there's your shills. But so many people, there's a lot of people who don't understand the amount of time it takes. They're like, people are very quick. People are very quick to say how things should be run, but it's like, do you understand that to do this takes an hour, and it takes one person an hour? So we need a team of people to handle this group, and it takes all of us 3 to 6 hours a day. And when we add that, and I'm saying all this to say, just like with your radio show, I did radio for a while, and it's just the amount of time that it takes behind the scenes to do these things. People have no idea. It's almost like when you see a singer on stage. People say, oh, something great happened because so-and-so singer sang, oh man, that was amazing. I say, what's really amazing is when that person spent 30 times the amount of time that you just saw them on stage, or 50 times practicing, rehearsing, gaining their confidence, refining their skill, developing their craft until they got out there and they could do what they did. That's where the real powerful thing happened. What you just saw was the result of it. So there's so much that goes into doing something excellent, and I just wish that we had more people who are willing to have the passion to do excellent things and to be involved in getting the truth out. And I applaud you for what you do. I know I say this at the end all the time, and I at least try to squeeze it in, but I am so grateful to you, to the network, to other people who are spreading the truth and have these awesome shows, because you're not going to get this from the lying, deceiving mainstream media. They lie to you every day, and I want people to wake up and realize that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and thank you for that too, by the way. Yeah, it's always nice to talk with you about a lot of things. And yeah, there were times I was going to just like walk away. It's like, I don't know how many years I've been here with Revolution Radio. I think it's over 6 now, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, I can't believe I've been here this long. The other show, Hyperspace, is like 2. It's just ridiculous, because once you get wrapped up in it, it's not like you're obsessed with it or anything, but it's like, it's just consistent. It becomes this part of you. It just becomes part of your lifestyle to some degree, and good or bad, But I'm glad we've been able to get out here, and at least we can say we've done something. We haven't sat around and just watched it all go by or burn to the ground. We tried our best, and we're still trying our best, and I think that's important.
Yeah, I really think the real manifestation of what the work that all the good people have done who are trying to do something good and trying to get truth out and trying to change the world, it's happening. It has a ripple effect, and it's kind of delayed. We're going to see the real manifestation of this a little bit down the road. Because right now people are becoming educated, but people are not motivated yet to do something necessary. I mean, talk about the massive, not everybody, because there's a wonderful group of people that do, but for the people who don't, for the massive number of people who don't yet, they have some background knowledge about this, and they're changing their worldview and they're forming their opinions. And it's going to cause the powers that be to have a much harder time implementing their new world order than they think. And I believe that's why it's not already implemented. I believe they originally wanted it fully implemented in the 80s, but they pushed it back, and they pushed it back because they had delay. The people rose up, and now look what's happening, the riots that are happening in the other countries, and people are getting sick and fed up with the bad laws and mandatory vaccines and the policies of government, the oppression, and they're running into a tremendous amount of resistance that I believe they did not expect, which is why Zbigniew Brzezinski made that statement about regretting ever giving or letting the public have this kind of access to the internet, because it brought people together. And when people start communicating, then they start being empowered because they realize they're not alone and they can actually do something. So it's a beautiful thing. It just, I wish it would happen faster, but at least we're getting somewhere, and there is real progress being made, and that's the exciting part.
Yeah, I see that too. Well, it is education. The thing about the internet, the window to the world, is it is very educational when you're using it correctly. And of course, there's some bad sites here and there. Of course, Google's information and all that garbage, but I can tell you there is some really good information here too, and I think that's part of the education factor. It's everybody's not only brainstorming on the internet and connecting and confirming data and reaffirming things, but it's more about the educational aspects of it, because they're not being taught these in college. Even the PhDs out there don't have information. It's really sad that they like to flaunt their educations, but when push comes to shove, what do they really know? I mean, I know a lot about a lot of things that would put a physicist to shame, quite honestly, and I'm not arrogant in any form. It's experience and decoding data. So it's very interesting to see how we've been able to evolve and use the technology on a positive scale, even though they're trying to undermine us.
Yeah, absolutely. And people need to realize, and this is one of the hardest things to get people to accept, is that one of the first areas where propaganda is used to attack or control the people is in the textbooks and in the universities. So academics are often the first targets. So you look at textbooks. I mean, we've seen textbooks that distort history, that talk about the meaning of the First and Second Amendments, and they completely twist what the meanings were for and what they were intended for. And we've already seen them twisting and trying to teach children about that. We see them, and this blows my mind because I'm old enough to know what the sky looked like. I know jets. I know how they work. I've been in this technology for a long time and very interested in this, and I never saw trails in the sky. I never saw anything like this. This never happened before, much less smell and taste it. I mean, much less smell and taste it, see it. But yet, people wait all around the world. It doesn't matter what country in, the schools are teaching the same propaganda at the same time in history. It's all coordinated. And so I try to get through people's heads. The New World Order is already in place. It's not coming. It's already here, because if you're going to take over the world, you can't do it in the public eye. You cannot do that. You would never do it. You have to do it secretly first, and then you secure yourself by legitimizing your presence in the public eye. So it's already in place. We're now in the phase where they're legitimizing themselves by creating chaos. And out of that chaos, they say, oh, we'll protect you from the chaos. We'll protect you. And through that, they bring regulation, they bring law, they bring one world government, the New World Order. So out of chaos comes the New World Order. That's been the plan for a long time, and that's how they implement it. So it's already here. They're just in the phase now of legitimizing themselves in the public eye.
That's a very good analysis. There's no doubt about that. Yeah. What's your impression of the new space fleet? What do you think of that?
Which one?
Well, the space fleet that President Trump wants to create.
Don't know. I don't know enough about it to form an opinion. So it's kind of.
I can give you my opinion of it, but I think
tell me.
I think there's a weaponization of the biodome, and I think that part of their space fleet is to basically deter enemy forces, which would be anybody in opposition of their black satellite projects, to control and manipulate the masses. That's my take, because these satellites, basically we have the black satellites that drive everything here on this world, artificial intelligence oriented. So if they get control over the main satellites, then that would be he who controls those satellites is going to control the world. I hate to say it, but it's true. And I think that's part of it is I think there's a race, not a race war, but it's kind of like a race to be part of or control these particular devices so that they can be the big, the big cheese. Excuse me, that's what I see anyway. And of course, I'm not discounting the Black Science Department that's been out there for a while with different exotic technologies as well. But when he said he wanted a space fleet, I thought immediately that there's competition. They're all racing for artificial intelligence right now. I don't know if you've been keeping up, but I have. And it seems to me like I think once they had a taste of how well it works, especially with interfacing with people, that I think they were wanting to have whatever country be one of the main powers. Excuse me as I lose my voice here, but I think that's what's going on. So just curious as far as what you thought. But
yeah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, I see. When I talk about the New World Order being already here, and we see that this striving for control going on. I hope this fits in the context a little bit, but years ago, long story short, I went to see four-star general talk in a big room, and there was thousands of people there, and he gave a presentation about Amway, because I was invited to be in Amway because he actually had this $1 million organization. I was being invited to be there, so a lot of people have been through this and can relate to it because they've had a relative do that. At the end, he spoke for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and he said, I'm going to change this was a 4-star general who was talking. If I remember, I think he was 4-star. I hope I'm not misspeaking, but he was really, really, really high up. And he said, I just want to tell you that, and it was under the Clinton administration, he says, I just want you all to know and realize, and this is totally different from what I've just spoken about, but this is too important for me not to say and let you know in this chance, that the current administration has given China the multi-warhead technology that the United States has developed. And that has just been given by this administration to China. And the reason I bring this up now is because just this week in the headlines, if people were watching, they saw that China has now just unveiled its new multi-warhead technology. And as I watched this, and I remember hearing that 4-star general talk and warn the public, saying this is incredibly dangerous time, that our administration is actually giving this technology away to China, and that we don't even have any idea what's going to happen in the future if they implement this technology. Well, guess what? This week they publicly announced that it's implemented and ready to go. So
interesting.
Yes.
That was with the Clinton administration?
That was under Clinton, yeah.
Yeah, that figures. Well, and then we had the Bush, and of course, it's really interesting in Obama. I mean, I think he did a disastrous job. And I have to tell you, I'm pretty sure that they were given so much technology and information or access to exotic technology that it's almost scary to see, or, if we were to see actually what they gave some of these countries.
Absolutely. In fact, I'll just share this. I have a friend who actually works in classified. He's a friend of a friend, actually, but I do know him directly. And he made a statement years ago. He was asked, like, what do you do? What's going on? Tell us something. He said, I can't tell you what's going on. I work in classified. But he said, here's what I will tell you, is that you watch the most, the science fiction movie that has the most advanced technology you've ever seen in it. Go watch that movie. We are way, beyond that.
I agree.
And that to me gives me goosebumps, because the technology that they have in many of these science fiction movies, even at that time that he made that statement, were far beyond what we can imagine now. And for him to make that statement, and I know this person, I don't believe this person is being dishonest at all. He's kind of giving a warning, but he's still keeping his classified status. And it's like very sobering to hear somebody say that.
Yeah, I always say there are two worlds existing simultaneously. You know, one is very breakaway society oriented, which is the black world, and then there's this one, which is being dumbed down and kind of poisoned. So it's really interesting. And I mean, like I said, I had my taste of technology, and I know I'm very clear on what they can do with interfacing people. And it's if you don't know what's going on, man, it's going to take people down psychologically, because it's a very powerful technology. And that they deploy. I know they have it. They're working on their super soldier program with the military. So the technology they used on me as more of a beta test is now being integrated into their military now. So it's very interesting. I saw some of the technology. I'm like, well, that's the same stuff they used on me back in 2004. So it was really interesting.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. And I think when you realize the people who are in control could not care less about you or your children or your family, you are just property to them, then this is so sobering to have this kind of power in the hands of people who have such disregard for any basic moral standard or your life or your health. And so, it's very frightening, but we need to be courageous enough to face this. We have to not shy away from things we're afraid of. We need to stand up and be courageous.
Oh, I think we can. What's interesting, I think their Achilles heel, just from my analysis alone, is the technology. It's the artificial intelligence. I think if we can control that, or at least get into a point where we can actually start trying certain people for war crimes or misusing technology and weaponization of everything to a point where they're literally poisoning society, I think we could probably make some progress. But to me, that's what it is. Without the black technologies, I don't think they'd be able to survive. And that's what that No World Order, I call them the No World Order, is about. It's literally deploying all these exotic technologies simultaneously to control the masses and finally say, here, this is who we really are. And it's a shame, and a lot of that technology, by the way, has been stolen. There were patents that were taken from genius inventors. I can look at the Tesla technology. That was one of them. I mean, some of the stuff they've been able to break away with and amplify has just been old technology that they've accessed and had access to.
Yeah, absolutely. On a very practical level, just to give people a little taste of the process, I mean, we have over 52 or 54% of the U.S. budget goes to military. So there's no accountability to the public. It just goes into a black box, and they do whatever they want to do. So here's something that's sobering: is that why did a hammer cost $2,000 on a particular why did a contractor have to pay $2,000, or the government have to pay $2,000 to a contractor for a hammer, and we all heard these stories of these exorbitant prices, and I believe it has to do with funneling money. What these military contractors do is they make this unbelievable amount of money. They're given a contract to perform some task or build a machine or a fighter of some sort. They charge these exorbitant costs, but a big piece of that cost goes into the black projects. It goes into the secret technology that is so far beyond what is allowed, the public is allowed to see. And so it's just a way of funneling money. That's the impression that I've gotten from some of the whistleblowers I've heard. Yeah,
that's so true. Yeah, it's a really good analysis. Like I said, your knowledge base is very impressive. I mean, we really do have a lot of good information to share with everybody. I so appreciate it. And I think we can get through it, but I think it's going to be a very stormy ride. I think it's going to be very, very stormy. I really do. It's been bad for me already. So,
Yes, I've always wanted to learn more about your situation, because I'm not really educated about the subject that you have written on and you published on. And
I'll send you my documentary. It's 40-minute documentary that kind of shows where I've been and when the technology. But it wiped my life out. It took me my whole life away in 2004, my marriage, everything. They extracted me. They literally inducted me into a covert program with this technology. So it was very traumatic, and my body has been trying to recover for years, but it's been very toxic. Yeah.
Wow. I want to learn more about that. That's something I haven't really.
Yeah, I think you should, because you can correlate it with your geoengineering and chemtrails, because it is a technology, and all of these things are radio transmission. They can be, or scalar, or microwave, and a lot of the technology is really designed to kill us. They're not using it on a positive scale. They're not using it with wisdom and enlightenment or trying to educate people. They're really trying to weaponize the body and the brain and push the target to whatever level they can to see how much it can take and endure, just like anything else. They want to see how much you can endure with the technology. And I think people need to be aware of this technology because that's what, in my opinion, that's going to be what they're going to be deploying for everybody. It's going to be the interface because they want to re-educate people. They really want to brainwash people. I mean, you know that.
I believe that wholeheartedly. They're already doing it. Yeah, they're already doing it. Yeah, exactly. They're utilizing every method that they can right now to do it already, as far as I know. Yes.
Yeah. And if we resist, the thing is, what I noticed with the technology is that if I resisted the interface and the communication live feed real time, they would push back with scalar assault. So they know how to take you down physically with an external signal interfacing your brain. That's dangerous. That's a weapon of war. And that's what they did to me, and that's what I was testifying against in 2006. So it wasn't a pretty thing, and that's why when I see the precursor, you saw it coming too. You saw this world coming. And I did too after I was inducted. I started writing Eye of the Remote series because I could understand, okay, I can use this to be an astronaut. We could do this with it. We could do that with it. We could heal people. But this is what they're at with it. They're weaponizing it. They're brainwashing it. They're using it for all the wrong reasons. So, yeah, as usual, you give it to the wrong people. And I can understand the military. They always want to weaponize everything anyway. I get that, but why on civilians?
Yeah. Well, I think they just they don't care. They just utilize. I mean, in my experience, they have their objective, and price is no object, and human life is no object. It's just meet the objective. That's in power and control to the people who control it all. So. That's what happens when you don't have accountability and you don't have a public which is doing their part.
Exactly.
There's always these. It's like kind of like the bullies. I mean, this is very sad, but kind of like the bullies at school. You're always going to have these people who will do anything. It doesn't matter the pain that they inflict and the damage that they cause. They will do it, and our job is to keep that at bay. I mean, in a very simplistic way, is to keep that at bay, and we have to be educated about these things in order to understand their devices. We have to understand what they're doing, how they operate, in order to effectively resist. And that's why I appreciate what you do, because you're educating people on this unbelievably dark and advanced technology that they're using in a horrible way. I don't know if I should say the technology itself. I mean, technology can be used for good and bad, but they're using it in such a horrible way.
Oh, they're using it in insidious ways. Let me tell you something. It's a violation of your spirit and your soul. Some people call it soul torturing, and I think it is. I think, because your brain is your sacred temple too. Your brain, your body, your mind, your spirit. And when you have an interface going on with synthetic telepathy and a live handler, and they're trying to dictate to you or psychotronically hit you with images, it's basically trying to control and program you into their arena. And it's definitely, that's not appropriate in any form or dimension. I mean, it's just not. So, to me, that's why I disclosed it. I was like, this is not okay. And what they did to me was completely, the capabilities are basically remote assassination. That's why I was surprised I made it this far, because it's been 15 years, But, these guys have been insidious. They can be. So, yeah.
Yeah, there are no limits. And that's why we have to be courageous and brave about this, because we're in a pivotal time right now. They're making their move. Like I said earlier, they are making their move now, and it's up to us to push this back another 100 years if we can, and hopefully reverse it if the people have enough passion. But we're being chemically dumbed down. We're being chemically exhausted. We're being electronically made ill, and they're using everything they can in the book to exhaust us and keep us sick. So it's hard to fight.
Right, I've heard that too, and I've also seen it seems like the backbone now, that drive, that passion is dropping. I mean, I get tired here and there, but yeah, a lot of people just don't have the energy to even try to do even what we're doing. And what's interesting, we did touch on the 5G, but I have heard horror stories about what 5G is capable of, and I don't even know if you really resonate with that or not, but it does sound like a simultaneous elimination of people. I mean, it sounds like it can, or it does have the potential to sync up and do a lot of damage simultaneously to people, and also on the DNA level. So, from what I understand, Deborah Tavares has done fantastic work. I don't know if you're probably familiar with her. She's done some very good research on this also, and I was, so I'm looking at that. I'm keeping an eye on that as well.
Yeah, the one thing I can detect now, this is not directly related to 5G, but I agree with everything you just said, and I do hear what I call the hum, and a lot of people hear this. I brought this up in our group many times over the years, and there will be, it's usually, and it will just turn on, and the hum is usually at 72 hertz. I can measure it. I'm a music guy, so I know how to measure a frequency. And the most common, it does shift. Sometimes it's at different frequencies, but the vast majority of the time it's at 72 hertz, and it's this really low frequency hum, which I hear as plain as day. Some people cannot hear it, but it just passes through your body. It's obviously coming from somewhere. I've heard it in Maine. I've heard it down here. And when I first started hearing it several years ago, I would go walking up the street, and then I would go driving across town to see if I could still hear it in other places. And I would still hear it. And then I went online and started talking to people about it. And I wrote an article, and it's amazing how many people are hearing this low frequency hum. So obviously there's an infrastructure behind all of this. It's almost like it's scary to talk about, but people talk about the government remotely enabling your camera on your phone or your microphone to surveil you. And this technology, what people have to understand is that's not a glitch. That was designed into your cell phones to have that capability. Okay, back in the 90s, they actually had in Popular Electronics, they had this article about speed bumps that police could deploy that would shut down your car for 30 minutes, and then your car would be fine and undamaged. And it was amazing because there was a little bit of media stir about it, like they started talking to the public about saying, oh, this great technology, but all us electrical guys, because I'm an electronics guy, that's where my degree is I started saying, hey, that's intentional. You can't do that to a car and not damage it. You can't totally disable a car through some magic static electricity and have the car fully recover. You're either going to damage it or you're not going to shut it off for any amount of time, for 30 minutes. That has to be designed into the electronics. So I think they underestimated the intelligence of the people, and suddenly that story just vanished. I mean, it just went away. So that has to be designed into the car. So if they were designing that into the car back then, what does the firmware of your car's computer have in it now?
Jeez. With smart cars? Oh, yeah, forget it. They're spy cars for sure. They can remotely access everything. Yeah, I think there's a third-party or second-party listener on all those devices. Plus, it plugs into your iPhone. I'm sure you're familiar that they can actually, when you're making a phone call, it goes through the computer of the car. So, yeah, there's no privacy.
Yeah, we've been familiar for years that they can hack your car too.
Right.
And if they know what these hacks are, then why are they not being plugged? I mean, I think the reason they're exposing the hacks is because then when cars do get hacked and people happen to get in accidents, then they're going to blame it on hackers rather than, they're kind of, that way they have a much larger base of suspects to draw from to blame it on, potential people to blame it on.
Yeah, it's very concerning because if somebody really wants to take someone else out, I talk about remote brain hacking, but they could take your car or whatever, and that could be also, they can take people out in their cars. And I've questioned a lot of other things that people have accidents. There's accidents and there's remote control influence over a vehicle that actually cause accidents. So there you go.
Right, yeah, and just with that speed bump, this is the important thing. The takeaway story is that this technology is designed in the car. This is the very close, intimate cooperation between industry and government to design systems that will transmit something to your car to shut it down for a certain period of time. That doesn't happen by accident. You can't just do that by accident. That has to be part of the software that's built into the car. This was 20 years ago, easily.
Wow, so. Amazing. I wish I had seen that article. Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. I know we're almost out of time here in the Illusion of. We probably have a few minutes plus or minus, but I want to thank you so much for joining us, Russ. It's like always a pleasure. I just enjoyed talking to you, and you have so much information. I know everybody appreciates. Do you want to give everybody your website once again and let everybody know how to get in touch with you, and also how they can join the group over there on Facebook? I'm surprised Facebook didn't shut you down yet.
Yeah, we actually got shut down for about 24 hours a couple of years ago. But the other groups, and my thanks goes out to all of them. They all messaged Facebook incessantly, and they turned our group back on.
Nice.
So, we had some cooperation with and we need to do that for each other. We need to do that. Yeah, so the website is globalskywatch.com. You can just click on Contact Us, and you can get my email, which is russ@globalskywatch.com if you want to contact me. We also have another website called Orbis Vitae, Orbis like orbit circle of life, orbisvitae.com. That covers everything else besides chemical aerosol injection. And if you want to join our Facebook group, click the Facebook logo at the top of any of those pages. It'll take you to our group, which now has 180,000 people from all over the world. So awesome. Come on in and be part of this movement.
Yeah, definitely join that for sure. I think that's fantastic.